Hello everyone, welcome back. In the last several sessions, we have at the backend with security and Spring Sessions. We also add some users to our database so that the security part is kind of like ready to be used. And in this lesson, we'll start to work on the front-end part, and we're gonna implement some of the components. Specifically, it will be login component from our admin portal. Okay, so first, come back to our terminal and go to our admin portal. And we're gonna do a ng-serve to start the admin services for Angular 2. Now that the service has been started, we can come to localhost 4200. And we can see our admin portal we had developed last time with this toggle button. Next, we're gonna add a new component. Okay, so we're gonna open a new terminal, and we add the components path. So if we want to start from scratch, and here we add root folder, and we're gonna go to admin portal, go to components. Actually, should be source app components. Okay, and we're gonna do an ng component, which is generic component, and we're gonna call a login. And you can see the login has been added, and we can start to add stuff here. So first, we're gonna open our login component.ts file. We're gonna define some variables. The first one would be credential, and this is a JSON object. Password, and everything is empty for now. And we have a state track flag, whether it's login or not. So default is false. And also we need a login service that we haven't created yet. So let's go ahead and create a new folder under app. Okay, not component folder, but app folder. We're gonna create a new folder called service. And we're gonna come back to our terminal and go to the service folder, and we're gonna generate a service, ng service, and we're gonna call it login. Okay, so the service has been added to our service folder, but the problem is if we go to app.module, we don't see the service added. So this is different from component, okay? So whenever you add a new component, say there's a login component, it's automatically added to our app.module.ts file, which is good. However, when we have a service, it's not added automatically, so we have to add it manually. So this is gonna come up to service folder, and we're gonna have a login.service. Although a service is declared in the providers array instead of the declarations. So this is for components, and this is for other third-party dependencies, and this providers is mainly for services. Okay, and after that we have our services bootstrapped to our modules. We can add content of services. Okay, so we have this login service. What we need to And here is first we need our HTTP and headers from Angular HTTP package, and then we're gonna import the observable from React.js observable, because we're gonna use observables. We're gonna use observables instead of promises for our Ajax call. Okay, so we have our HTTP services. We're gonna instantiate the add in our constructor. And then we can define a method which accepts a username as a string type, password as string type. We'll define a URL which is localhost 8181/token that encoded credentials equals to BTOA. So this is basically a method to encrypt the strings, whatever strings within this method. So this BTOA is encrypted with base 64, okay, which is required in order to send the token through the HTTP post or HTTP GET method. And then we define a basic header equals to basic space. This space is very important, okay? Encoded credentials. And headers equals to new headers. We have the content type. The case are very important. It should be exactly upper and lowercase like that. And application x/ or dash www-form-url encoded. Okay. And then we have the authorization as basic header. Alright. And then we're gonna have, let's see. So this new header should be wrapped around a parenthesis. We're gonna return a this.http.get URL headers. So basically what this does is that we're defining a method in our service called send credentials, which accept a username and password. They are string types, they're both string types. So this is the good side of TypeScript, okay? You can define it types of a specific parameter. This is not like JavaScript, you cannot define the type, okay? So this is kind of, instead of dynamic type for JavaScript variable, you have more of a static. But this type is not completely static. You can also define a variable, say something like, and you don't give a specific type about it, okay? And here we define the URL for localhost 8181. So this is just for a backend service address. You can give it 8080 or 8181, whatever you like. It's just, it has to be the same address as the backend when you're starting to run it, okay? And here we are giving the endpoint as token. That's because we want to trade the user credential for a token from the Spring session, okay? And in order to pass that credentials to the backend, we have to encrypt it with the base 64 using a specific format like username, colon, password, and then encrypt it. And in order to pass it as a header, we're going to use the basic method or the basic token. So it's going to be basic space plus the encoded username, colon, password. Okay, so that will be it, our header. and this header will be under authorization. And we need to specify the content type as from the URL encoded. And after that, we return a HTTP GET method. So this send credential method eventually will be called on our login component. Okay, so let's come back to our login component. We're going to import the login service from services, and we're going to define a login service on submit. So this onSubmit basically means when the username and password has been submitted, okay, we're going to match this method up with the submit function in the HTML code later. But we're going to define the content here for our submit method. So we're going to call the login service and then call the send credential method. We're going to pass the username from the credential.username, credential.password. Okay, and then we need to call the subscribe method. So this is important. All right. So if you don't call the subscribe method, the HTTP is not going to be committed. All right. So after you call the subscribe method, you will have two responses. One is for result response, or whatever you think is successful, and one is error, which is unsuccessful. So if it's successful, we can print out the result, and then we're gonna put the XOF token into our local storage. And also we're gonna change the flag for login state to true, and then we're gonna refresh the page. And if there's anything error, we simply log the error. Okay. So let's recap what we're doing here. Basically, we're defining a method. This method will be called once we click on the button for submitting the username and password. And this method in turn calls the login services we have created, initialized here, the instance. And because we are using a private keyword, so we have to use this keyword to call this login method, login service, and in turn call this send credentials method, which accept two parameters. One is the username and one is password. So this credential.username and password initially would be empty, okay? But once we have typed in the HTML, those values, the type in the value, inputted values will be binding to those two variables, which we can retrieve through this .credential.username and password. Okay, so once we have this, remember in the login service we are returning this http.get URL headers. So we have all this bunch of things sent as headers to the backend service, and the backend service will validate credentials. If everything goes well, successful, it will send back a response which has a XOF token. So the result will be passed through JSON. It will be a JSON result. We want to pass it and get the token value and set into local storage that will be stored in the browser. The local storage is something that you can store in your browser, and usually it can be as large as 5 megabytes. So this is very convenient to be used. And actually this one should be set item instead of set. And after that, we change the flag for login status from false to true, which means the user has logged in. And we refresh the page so that anything new will be coming up, will show up. Alright? So that's pretty much for this lesson. We haven't developed the template yet, but we will try to do that in the next lesson. Okay? See you guys in the next video. Bye.